The most recent one was when my gorgeous daughter, who was in a awful accident, which absolutely changed all our lives, actually. She was driving a car and someone walked in front of her car and took their own life. Tragedy on so many levels to unpick. And I remember thinking, please don't die, about this woman. I knew it was going to be hideous, whichever way we looked at it. But when you go through something like that, the ripples are huge. And for me, I had to keep going regardless of what was going on.
Welcome to the Burnout Detox Kit podcast. I'm your host, Sophie Teen. I'm an award-winning people and culture executive, keynote speaker, coach, and the founder of the Burnout Detox Project. Now, for more than a decade, I help companies build high-performing teams and cultures across fast-growing businesses. But behind the scenes, I was burning out over and over again. So I saw the side of success nobody talks about openly. So each week, I bring you raw conversations, expert insights, and honest stories that will help you navigate your toxic workplace, rebuild your confidence, and finally understand what success should never demand from you. So if you press play today, it means some part of you is ready for that to change. Wherever you're listening from, welcome. And let's get into today's episode. Welcome, Sarah. I am so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's brilliant. I'm loving it already. And I've not even started talking yet.
Amazing. Well, Sarah, the first thing I really want to kind of point out is there are very few people who can name what's really going on beneath the surface and still meet it with compassion, clarity, and the strength, especially the way you've shown strength throughout your journey. And I'm just so thankful that we get to hold space for that today. So coming into the session today, something that really stayed with me from our chat when you were talking about how burnout doesn't just show up in your life as a collapse. Sometimes it can be numbness, your disconnection from your own body, your mind, that you kind of feel like someone else is steering the wheel in life. So can you take us back to that season of your life and how did it happen?
Yes. So it's detachment, and I don't mean detachment as in, a real psychological space as well. It's just, you just feel constantly detached. You almost feel like you're viewing your life through the lens of somewhere else. And for me, there's been several different periods of my time where that's really hit hard, actually. But the most recent one was 4 years ago when my gorgeous daughter, who was then 19, was in a awful accident, which absolutely changed all our lives, actually. She was driving a car and someone walked in front of her car and took their own life. And it was an awful thing to happen, tragedy on so many levels to unpick. But for me, I got to the scene of the accident and watched it all unfurl in front of me. And I can vividly remember it in glorious technicolor, looking at my daughter. And I remember thinking, please don't die, about this woman. Because I knew I knew it was going to be hideous, whichever way we looked at it. And as a result, of course, my daughter was broken, she's had a journey to go through. But when you go through something like that, the ripples are huge. And for me, it was that feeling that I had to keep going. I had to keep going regardless of what was going on. I have a business to run. That wasn't going to stop. And I had to hold the world up so I could hold my daughter up. I was struggling left, right, and centre. We'd had a horrible start to the year. And I remember at the start of the year, we'd lost our dog. And it was so ridiculous because I remember thinking, well, that's the worst thing that's going to happen. And then the accident happened the night before my birthday. And the challenge has been since then is when people say the worst that can happen, I've always been a fixer. I've always been the person that holds the sky up. I've been a single parent for a long, long time. And it was a case of holding the sky up whilst I was shaking and I was crumbling. And I see in so many women, we're cracking on, we're still going, we're still moving forward, but inside everything is just like detached, is numb. I didn't cry, but that detachment, that numbness, that this can't be my life.
A journey.
It's been bloody tough. And the thing is, this is also the beautiful duality of life that I don't think we talk about often enough, especially when it comes to things like burnout, because you can be going through something like that and then you can have a really nice time with something else. We can feeling like we're rocking in a corner and then be laughing hilariously with our friends. We can, and I have a very dark sense of humor, and that's one of the ways that we've all coped. This is something that we live with, especially Izzy, and and this is something we move through, and it's altered how we work with things. It's altered my job. I am the queen of disaster planning. I'm really good at disaster planning, and that supercharged it. That supercharged the crisis at any corner. And I'm better. I've done a lot of work on myself. I'm better at taking my brain away from some of those intrusive thoughts.
This is really powerful. And I hope that anybody who's listening right now can really kind of like take note of every journey is different for different people. Some, have it. Some may go through a little bit of a shorter time to actually completely heal from it. And many of us actually still go through it. And one of the things I have had to learn really hard for myself is that, and I know, Sarah, you've learned this too, is how hard it is to stop because it's circumstances, like just like, what was happening to you at that time. You were trying to hold it all together for the family. You were carrying everyone, albeit the crisis that had just happened in front of you. I imagine you were also trying to learn how to process all of these mixed emotions that you were going through, raising your children, fixing all the things. Like you said, you're a fixer. A lot of the times burnout happens to the fixers most oftenly. And I imagine it also just becomes your entire identity. So I'm really curious. What was the aha moment that helped you break that cycle? Or are you still in a moment where you're trying to hold it all together?
I don't think there has been an aha moment. I think it's a process. And I think this is also something to acknowledge is that sometimes it's about, I often talk about it as the unfurling. And actually, if we look at any change or any change management or any change curve, we go through that room of denial, which I spent a lot of time in. This cannot be happening to us. And then you go into a room of confusion. It's a movement, when sometimes it's felt like we have 4 steps forward and 1 step back. Izzy's done really well, and then she's been triggered at the beginning of this year, which was tough again. That's been the key for me. It's been, I call it human scaffolding. Having that human scaffolding around me has absolutely helped, and having people that, haven't said, I can imagine if you're not looking after yourself, you can't look after everybody else. But that's part of it as well, is going, right, okay, what do I need today? Actually, one of the things that I realized, one of the a little bit of an aha moment was one of the things that happens to Izzy is when she wakes up in the morning, especially in the couple of years after the accident, is that she has to get the thoughts out of her head. She has to, before she can go into work. She went through university while she was going through this, and now she's got her, I call it her big girl's job. She's in an amazing career. She's doing brilliantly. And when she wakes up in the morning, she often has to get out of her head what's going on. And I'm not great in the mornings because I'm menopausal and don't sleep. I think I last slept about 23 years ago when she was born. And one of the things that I realized is that I need to have some moments of peace in the morning to allow my brain to process before she comes and vomits all her thoughts at me. So what I then put in place, which again was a game changer for me, was I know what time she has to get up to get to work. I get up half an hour before then. I set my alarm half an hour before then, especially if she's going through a bit of a bubble, which we call it when she bubbles a little bit. And I go downstairs and make myself 2 cups of coffee, not 1 cup of coffee, but 2 cups of coffee in a good mug. It's got to be a good mug. None of these crappy mugs. It's got to be your favourite mugs. And if anyone touches my mugs, they're in trouble in my house as well. So you go downstairs and I get myself 2 mugs of coffee. I'd let the dog out. I'll come upstairs. I get back in bed. I put my 2 mugs down. The first mug of coffee, I sit there in silence and I drink it. And Izzy knows now that if she comes in and I'm drinking that first cup, she has to hold on to what she wants to say until I've drunk that first cup of coffee. And so it's about me saying to her, this is what I need so I can help you. But then I had to figure out what I needed. And that was the start of my day was really powerful and really important.
Amazing. I can only imagine like having to prepare yourself so that you can then prepare others and take others through that journey. It's an incredible, I would even call it a sacrifice, right? Because you're having to change the way you live, Sarah, in order to lift everyone else up around you. Because like you said, this isn't about being selfish. This is precisely having to take care of yourself before you can lead others. I absolutely love what you're doing.
Yeah.
You,
But do you know, I wouldn't see it as I don't see it as a sacrifice. I
mm,
think at the time, I've been through a really resentful phase with it. I'm not gonna lie, why is this happening to us? And
mm,
this isn't fair. And I've done that. But actually now that morning routine, my 2 cups of coffee I see that as my gift to me, and that then allows me to be in because obviously I coach women and I coach organizations and I work in training and development. So I have to be able to show up as my best self. So, shifting that mindset from the sacrifice to the gift has been powerful as well.
well, I stand corrected. It is a gift.
Right. I'm a gobby as well. I can't help myself.
Well, coming into a few things that you've really mentioned, and I think it's going to be really interesting to talk about, is I think you call it the midlife burnout, right? It's so rarely talked about in very honest way. You've named menopause, grief, caretaking, business pressure. It's not just one thing. It feels like what you're really labeling is the layering of all of these things that are happening to you. And I exceptionally love the first time we were talking about this. You said, I didn't lose my fire. I just had to take a moment of pause and then go and find it again. So, what's your message to women listening who kind of feel like they've lost themselves in the service of everyone else? Because it happens. It definitely happens, right? It's inevitable because it's the maternal instincts that we have.
Yeah. And that it's the emotional load. And it doesn't matter how much you try and explain it to someone who doesn't get it. And I'm gonna call it the majority of men. And it doesn't matter how many times I say to my husband, who's a fabulous human being, it doesn't matter how many times I say to him, it's the thinking that is the pressure. It's the thinking of all the things, it's the disaster planning, it's the risk assessments of every situation that you go in it. I've got 2 amazing parents who are still alive, but my dad's just collected 2 cancers. I'm managing that alongside my kids are 19 and 23. You think that it's gonna get easier. Whoa, there. It's like, there's a different set of things that hit you. And there is a lot. It's a lot. And that midlife load, the layering of all the stuff is also then there's almost this catalyst of shit, I'm halfway through my life. I'm halfway through. And then if you look at the averages, you've got that ticking time bomb going in your head going, is this it? Is this me? I'm sure I've got more to do. There's something I've not done yet. Where do I put my impact? What's my legacy? We might not use those words, but that's all the noise that's going on. I'm like 52, that I've lived more than half my life if I lived to the average age, and then you think I need to be fitter, I need to be healthier. And so then you pile on all the pressure, I call it the curse of the shoulds. Oh, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And what that means is that it's pressure, layered on, like you said, caregiving, layered on holding the world up, layered on the fixing. And you lose yourself in that. And there's a bit of hope because it comes back. It comes back with fire. It absolutely comes back with fire because you come back and you go, wow, this is my time now to make a difference, and whether that difference is opening a bookshop on a beach and feeling the sand between your toes every single day, whether it's simply reading a book in peace, whether it's going for a walk every single day in nature, whether it's, taking over the world in whatever you want to do, that finding your fire comes back, but it only comes back if you allow yourself the chance to pause. And I never say stop because you can't stop. I can't suddenly stop and say, no, I'm not going to run my business today because then there's no money to pay the mortgage. And I can't say, and I don't want to say stop, but it's about slowing down to speed up. It's about pausing and it's about going, right, okay, what am I noticing? What am I noticing? And often when I'm working with fabulous humans, we start with what don't I want anymore? Because that's the easy bit to work out. What don't I want anymore? What are your anti goals? When you work out your anti goals, because of the way our brains work, and we're the majority of women that I know, we're all in survival instinct. How do we move into thriving? Is we work out what we don't want and then we flip it. And that's the powerful piece.
I'm going to start writing a whole list of what I don't want right after this because I still think that I am not as gentle and as kind as I should be to myself. But Thanks for your message. That was a really powerful reminder for me.
My pleasure. The more we can do that, the better. Because sometimes we don't give ourselves permission. It's like, I'd like to write everyone a little permission slip. Here's your permission slip to just take 5 minutes, because that's all it takes. These aren't big things. People that say, oh, I've got a vision board and I'll look at it every day. And, that's not the way I can work, and everyone's different. But equally, often it's putting the pause in for the 5 minutes to work out what you don't want, and then allowing your brain to flip the narrative into going, what does that mean I do want then? Does that mean peace? Does it mean purpose? Does it mean impact? Does it mean influence? Does it mean better connections with people? Does it mean more conversations about this thing that I really care about? What do I care about? Figuring out what you care about again. If someone said to me 3 years ago, what do you care about? I'd be like, well, I'm not sure.
And that's okay, right? That's a
Yeah.
journey on its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know it's a hard topic to talk about. Let's talk about rock bottom. I just want to come back and circle back to that. It's a really hard place to come back from. And what I can gather from you, Sarah, is your journey has been nothing less than difficult, right? And I've learned that for myself as well. I've had to, stop chasing the fixes, stop being the fixer, like you said, and start getting really honest about my own limits. Yes, I haven't quite done the exercise of asking myself what I don't want, but I definitely had to draw some hard lines in between as to what lines I don't want to cross. What is it that are absolutely no-go zones for me? And then beyond that, we go into healing. And I know everybody looks at healing differently. And we talk so much about resilience in either corporate settings or your personal resilience. But one thing I keep coming back to, like what you said, I connect taking a pause to come back and move faster next time as recovery. We do nothing about it. We know it is absolutely something we need for our minds, for our bodies, but we continue to ignore it until it breaks or until something breaks. So, I know you're also a big fan of toolkits. What are the steps in recovery that are most often overlooked?
Stopping, pausing, doing something that makes your mind calm down and slow down, and then also leaning into the brain science part of it. So the key thing about a toolkit is you have to work out what goes in it when you're feeling good, because I can guarantee that when you start to go down that slope, whatever it is, you can't suddenly magic up a toolkit if you don't know what you're accessing. So figuring out what makes you feel good when you're feeling good is really important, and then being aware of it. For me, one of the things that absolutely helped me as well from the accident was I journaled every day. I followed a process called the Morning Pages by a fabulous author called Julia Cameron, and that absolutely helped me get all my thoughts out of my head onto a piece of paper. Now, equally, my best friend in the world knows where my morning pages are, because there's like this many books of it now, and I can't bring myself to throw them away. But she knows if anything happens to me, she has to run around here faster than anything, and she has to burn them, because if anybody ever reads them, it's not going to paint me in a good light at all. So things like understanding that that's part of your toolkit is really important to your recovery. Now, your recovery doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go and sit in a room in darkness for 10 hours a day. Recovery can be also active rest. If our brain goes in active rest, what that allows us to do is our brains then close some of the tabs that are going on. And actually, a bit like going through the scanner in the airport, it goes through the scanner system and it files it in the appropriate experience box. And if we don't allow that processing, if we don't allow that the living through of the stuff and putting it in the right experience box, it's going to come back and hit the scanner every single time. It's going to come back with an alarm, and it's often going to get bigger. So the processing is part of it. The toolkit, then, if we're looking at what active rest looks like, that could be getting outside. It's one of the best things that we can do. Our environment is one of the most powerful things to help us shift our mindset, help us shift our brain patterns, help us shift where we are and what we're feeling. And that piece of resilience, it's the thing that I will get on it's the hill I will die on, because the recovery piece of it, like you say, is the bit that we forget. Because we talk about resetting, we talk about reimagining, we talk about building this toolkit, but right at the start of it is the recovery. And the recovery can be short, it can be quite dependent on what you're going through. It can be quite short. I'm talking to a lot of women at the moment who are going through redundancy. And they're having a really hard time because that in itself massively impacts your loss of identity. Who even am I anymore? When actually a part of the process that I talk to them about is, right, what's your downtime? Because they go straight into fix mode. What can I do next? Where can I go? What can I do? Where can I go? And it's like, well, hang on a second, let's pull it back. And if you look at any of the sports psychology, if you want to perform at your peak, you have to warm up to something, peak performance, then you warm down, and then you have quality recovery time. And that quality recovery time is where your muscles actually start to relax, and then you're able to fire up again. So when we're talking about that toolkit, what is the recovery that works for you? Because it's going to be really personal. For me, it's getting outside. For some of my friends, it's going to CrossFit, the weirdos. It sounds like my life is one big tragedy. It's really not. It's absolutely like, it's full of joy. But 2-3 years ago, I lost one of my very best friends to an autoimmune disease, and her husband, he walked the Wainwrights in the Lake District as part of his grief recovery. And, that for him was his way of coping. He got, again, environment was key, but it became his mission to walk every single Wainwright in the lakes, walks through his grief, and it's finding that thing that is part of resilience. And she said to me, she said, it's not about building resilience. We've got resilience. It's about unlocking the things that are blocking our resilience. And I was like, mic drop. That's amazing. I'm stealing that now. It's going to be.
What do you mean we have resilience the whole time? I thought we had to build it because it wasn't natural.
Yeah, and it's there. It's in us. We've naturally got resilience. It's all the blockers that put in the way that means it's rocked. So how do we unblock it? How do we tap into it? What can we do that's going to help us realize that we are resilient and we can move forward? And we might move forward a little bit slowly. We might move forward in a different direction. So many people change directions when something comes and the tsunami of their lives. But I love that take on resilience.
Work. Sarah, you are the true example of that. It is life happening to you. It is grief. It's caring. It's menopause. It's tragedy. It's the load we carry that no one actually sees. But we continue to blame work for causing burnout because it's probably the easiest thing to blame. So, in your experience so far, one very important question that I hope everyone else can actually benefit from too is, how can we then live life as fully integrated humans again?
It's a really tricky one because you're absolutely right. We talk about burnout in the workplace all the time, but actually it's usually the collision of what's going on with our life as well as what's happening in work. So if you're in a high pressure environment and then you've got a collision of something that's going on with life, then boom, it's like, there's the volcano erupting. The challenge is figuring out what you do next, and the challenge is how you work it out, and it's so individual. Talking to people, that power of connection is so important. Who can you go to for support? Who's in your inner circle? And I would include in that inner circle, you'll probably have people in the workplace in your inner circle, and you will have people in your life, but often it's when life gets lifey that it impacts on every single aspect of your days, of the ways that things happened. Yes.
How can we integrate to have full, fulfilling lives again?
The first thing I would do is notice. Again, we ignore the power of noticing. So, how aware are you of what's going on? And I love a scale because often we're like, if you say, oh, notice what happened yesterday, notice the question you were just asked. I'm like, oh, well, I've already gone in 700 different brain things. I'm already holding the scale up. I've not got time. But if you gift yourself 5 minutes at the start of every single day to notice how you feel, it's really powerful. And then then give yourself a scale between 1 and 10, 10 being brilliant, 1 being crap. And ask yourself how you're feeling today, how you're showing up today. Well, I'm feeling a 2. Right, okay, well, if I'm feeling a 2, what do I need to do about that? Where do I place my impact and my effort to get the best out of the thing that I need to get out of today? So impact effort mapping is absolutely brilliant. And actually managing our energy is the key rather than managing our time. Burnout is a really big word and there's a massive spectrum. If you're cruising towards burnout, you'll only notice it if you're being aware of it. You'll only be aware of it if you take the time out, and it takes 2 minutes to do every single morning. So what is the action that we can take? Do we need to speak to someone? Do we need to ask for support? Do we need to go to our GP? Do we need to go to the doctors? Do we need to take some time out? Where can we take that time out? You know, is it about the 5 minutes of peace in the morning so we can decide how we want to show up for the day, how we want to move forward in the day? And managing our energy, again, has been a real key game changer for me. Like, I talk a lot about doing an energy audit, understanding where your energy drains are, understanding what gifts you your energy, what supercharges your energy. For me, talking to you, being on this, I come off it and I'm like, woo, this is amazing. I love it. And I'm then bouncing through the rest of my day. Whereas I'll do things like my invoices that absolutely drain my energy. Now, of course, I have to do my invoices because otherwise I'm not going to get it paid. But equally, when I'm looking at the impact and the effort mapping, if I wake up in the morning and I'm a 5, but I know I've got to do my invoices, and that's where I need to create the impact today because ultimately I'm not going to get paid if I don't, then I can focus on getting that thing done. So it's about making sure that you're aware of what your non-negotiables are, what your priorities are, and where you need to create the impact that day and the effort and energy you can put in, because our energy isn't finite. We have to charge the battery pack just like we charge our phone.
We have to recharge. I mean, you're absolutely right. If you slice that, I think you and I are quite similar people because I do like to kind of slice up my day with energy. Energy draining work can happen, of course, because you can't avoid it. It needs to happen and it needs to be done, but it doesn't have to happen all throughout the day, right? If you're really meticulous about how you pick and how you actually scatter your energy anywhere, you can actually have a quite fulfilling life.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. And then you won't remember this because I'm a lot older than you, but there used to be a shop called Woolworths which had the best pick and mix selection in the world. I suspect if anyone's over 45 and listening, they will hard relate to this. If they're not, then they'll be like, "What on earth are you talking about?" But the best pick and mix ever. But you'll always layer it with the stuff you really enjoy. That's the easy bit to do. You're like, oh, I really like a banana and a shrimp. Who doesn't like a banana and a shrimp? So you pick them and you put more of them in. And then when you're trying to fill it up, you'll think, oh, well, I'll just, maybe I'll put a little bit of one of them in as well, because they're all right, but they're not my favorites. Well, we need to do the same with our day. We need to pick and mix our day. We need to pick the bananas and the shrimps because they are the ultimate snacks. So, that pick and mix strategy is really important for our day.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Sarah, thank you so much today. Obviously, I'm really, really grateful for your strength, your softness, and honestly, your unapologetic honesty, right? You remind us that we don't have to fall apart for pain to be valid.
Yeah.
You are recognized, you are seen. The numbness and the disconnection of between yourselves and your body and mind is simply a signal that your body is sending to you. Recovery isn't a luxury. Neither should it ever be a choice. It is actually essential. And I love the fact that you just reminded us that if you don't feel like you're someone who can say stop, no to everything, then equally it's as important to actually take a pause. All of that can go into your recovery toolkit. I think I'm going to say that from now on. But it's all about being able to rest before we can rebuild slowly. So thank you so much, Sarah. How can people follow your work, get to know you a little bit more, and basically just hound you down for any other wisdom advice?
Well, first of all, I've loved it. I love talking about this because the more conversations that we can have about it, the easier it is for somebody else to spark the conversation. And that's the power, is is opening up the conversation. So thank you. I've really loved being on here. You can find me. I have a podcast called It's Got Pockets, which is all about everything we've talked about with a lot more swearing, because I'm a quite sweary when I'm not not trying to be a bit better behaved. That's about women sharing their stories of everything from smashing glass ceilings to how they've coped. You can find me on Instagram at FoundHer Fire, because that is the community that I run, which is all about how we as women find our fire and how we keep our fire and how we build our fire and we keep the sparks lit. I think I've gone through enough analogies now. I need to stop with that. On LinkedIn, I'm Sarah Knight. And of course, you can find me on my website, which is sarahknightconsultancy.com.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah, again for your time today. And I'm sure lots of people will be reaching out, especially if they kind of feel like they need to go and find their fire. I cannot stop saying that because it's the most remarkable thing for me to say all day, because I need my fire to be replenished.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to put another log on the fire.
If this episode resonated with you today, make sure to follow and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a conversation as important as this. The Burnout Detox Kit is here to make sure ambitious people like you recover from the burnout without losing themselves in the process. So if you know someone navigating burnout right now, workplace toxicity, even simply trying to hold it all together, share this episode with them. You never know who might need to hear it. I thank you for your courage today, and thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next episode.